Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by our friends at SureUp, an engagement platform designed to educate members and propel them forward on a variety of total wellness topics. Learn more about how you can leverage SureUp to attract, retain, and reward employees at sureup.com. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Lori Jones. She's the president and CEO of Avocet, a marketing and advertising company based in Longmont, Colorado. She's also the host of the Integrate and Ignite podcast. I really enjoyed my conversation with Lori, and I think you will too. Lori Jones on the Riderflex podcast today. How you doing, Lori?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I appreciate you being on. So are you in Longmont today?
I'm in Longmont out of our corporate headquarters. The Paris office was busy today, so
you guys are on Main Street, right?
We are Main Street, USA.
All right. You know, I go over there all the time for meetings and lunch and happy hours and all that. I'm sure I've walked by your front door several times.
You probably have. I tell you, it's just an incredible. I'm looking out the window right now. It's an incredible, truly Main Street, USA sort of area. We just got voted Boomtown. Greatest boomtown in the United States. So,
what? Are you serious?
Yes. Isn't that great?
Wow.
We are the official #1 boomtown in the U.S.
I didn't know that. I mean, hey,
yeah.
It's a pretty cool little town. Oh, it's not really little anymore, but it's a great town.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, where are you from? Every once in a while, when I want to splurge and have one of those, a breakfast that's like 10,000 calories, I go over to, was it Janie's? Is it Janie's?
So, okay, this was my morning. Janie's is right next door to us.
Oh,
okay?
It is? Okay.
Right next door.
Great.
And the first thing I did this morning was run over there and grab a side of bacon for my breakfast.
There you go. I mean, it's one of those places that's great, right?
It is. I mean, it is just like the messy soup. It's incredible. And I know a quick little story about Janie's. So as I was growing up, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, my pastor and a bunch of us athletes at Longmont High would go to Janie's. It was a donut shop, Daylight Donuts at the time. We'd go to Daylight Donuts and have our morning ministry.
How about that?
Cool.
Very cool.
Right next door.
Yeah, it's not a place you want to eat at every day because you'll weigh like 400 pounds.
No, I get my bacon maybe once or twice a month.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So you grew up in Longmont.
I did.
Okay, and we went to high school there. Went to what? There's only what are there 2 high schools there now? I guess.
Well, at the time, I believe there are 4 now. But at the time, it was Longmont High and Skyline High School.
And you went to Longmont High?
I did.
All right, very good. And brothers, sisters, family. Talk to me a little bit.
Sure. I have 2 brothers that are fabulous and a little sister who is my best friend. And we're going to get into this in a moment. But my father, of course, started Avocet, and I started working with him right out of college. And a wonderful mom as well. The whole family has been in the marketing communications arena, either on the trade show side, uncles, my grandparents, or the advertising side.
So when you guys were growing up, your dad had the business.
When we were growing up, he was a partner in a trade show exhibit company out of Denver.
Okay.
And in 1980, as a matter of fact, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. Wow. In 1980, he started, the one-man shop out of the basement of my parents' home. Still, he was moonlighting. He was like the early gig economy. He was moonlighting and starting up really the full service agency side of things, which he loved. He wanted to get out of the 3D only stuff and move into the agency. And so we were all in high school. He was moonlighting and ultimately took the plunge and in 1989 after I graduated from college.
Okay, so he made that move in 89 then. He went all in 89, basically.
All in 89. Actually, he probably went all in about 85, something like that, but operated as a one-man op. Out of the basement of my parents' home.
Now, if you graduated college in 89, now what about the other kids? Where are they in range there?
So my older brother, who worked with the agency for quite a while as well, he is, we're all 2 years apart. So it's high school was 83, 85, 87. and 89.
I see. I was just thinking to myself,
That was some
okay.
quick math there.
I,
Count by twos.
I'm just thinking to myself, okay, 4 kids at home. I'm going to quit my good paying job and start this business by myself, kind of in the basement, which was, probably risky at the time, because at that point he's thinking, well, I still got to put all these kids through school
Yeah.
and
It
you remember?
was risky, and
Yeah.
it was very gutsy, even more.
Right.
And my father was so talented and just had this way with people that just lit up a room.
Oh,
And
really?
for him to be able to say to himself, I can make a go of this, I can do it, and I will be successful. I mean, you've got to define your success up front, right? You need to say, I will be successful doing this in order to believe it. And he did, and here we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year.
That's fantastic. Now, so you were a cheerleader in high school and in college. Do you
you did your research, didn't you?
Yes. Did you get your outgoing extrovert, people skills from your dad?
I definitely did. Thank God I was the one wearing the skirt though, and he wasn't.
Was your mom kind of quiet, or is she the same?
No, she's the same. So she was a cheerleader. My parents grew up next door to one another in Wheaton, Illinois.
What? She was a cheerleader too? That's cool.
Families were best friends, literally since the time my father was 10 and maybe my mom was 7. We did everything together as a family, and they got married, and they dated secretly, by the way, in college. My father was at Northern Illinois. My mom was at Northwestern.
Why
secretly?
Why secretly? Why did it have to be a secret?
Because there was so much pressure between both sets of grandparents for my mom to marry one of the Sartorius boys.
I see.
So,
okay.
And lovely pressure, I just so engaging and lovely. They were best friends. The families were
cool.
So my parents got married, and they were married for, unfortunately, we lost my father last year.
I see.
He retired about 5 years ago. And unfortunately, we don't know what it was. The doctors couldn't figure it out.
Really?
But we lost him. And they were married over 55 years.
What? Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah, wow. Beautiful love story.
Your mom's still alive?
She is.
Okay. All right, very good.
She's doing great. She still kicks us all. So.
And what about you? What about your own family? Are you married, kids? What's your story?
I am. So I am married. Thank God I did not say yes before I said yes to the man that I married, because he's awesome and I adore him. And we've been married 20 years this fall.
Okay.
And he is the best thing that has happened to me. We have 4 children.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I became, he was married once before, and I became Scotty's mom when he was 12. And then we have Taylor, Bailey, and Kendall. We've got Taylor going into college this next fall, and then Bailey will be a senior in high school, and Kendall is in middle school.
Longmont High?
No, we have gone the parochial route.
Okay.
So our kids have always been in private parochial schools.
Okay. All right. So you were stepmom right away. That's not an easy job.
I was. And, it was such a great gift. Incredible young man. He was so close, is still so close to the children. One of our fears, you can't write these things. You can't anticipate these things. No. But when Terry and I got married, Scotty was 12. And he's adopted as well. And one of our fears was that he would not feel he was a Jones when we started having the children because of the adoption and, of course, the second marriage. And it was anything but that. He lived with us full time when we had the 2 middle kids. And he bonded with them and is so close to all the children today. It's been a total gift. And wow. They make the time to spend very quality time with one another, which takes effort, and it's teamwork, and they're all in. They adore one another.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So you go to CSU. Why did you decide to go there? Did you get a scholarship for cheerleading? How did that work?
I did not. So I walked onto the team. Okay. Let's see, it would have been my my freshman year, the end of my freshman year, and I made the team right away.
Cool.
We
Very
were
cool.
on partial scholarship, which was nice. It was just an added gift
Right.
to, paying for my college. Because again, at the time, my father was starting Avocet. He was, my older brother was in college, and my mom had gone back to college as well.
Wow.
So they helped out where they could, but I ended up paying for my college. I worked through college. I got a lot of grants. I got financial aid, and
Very
then
good.
I cheerleaded on partial scholarship as well. So I made it all work.
Excellent. So did you come out of school with a little bit of debt, and then you paid it off?
I did. It took me 10 years to pay off my student loans.
It was
money well spent. That check I wrote every month was something that was very important to me.
Excellent. I can't believe you just said 10 years. We talked before we started recording that we both graduated high school in 85. We both graduated college in 89. We both majored in communications. And by the way, it took me exactly 10 years to pay off my student loans.
I tell you, there's something, and I just want to call you Keith Urban right now, too.
By the way, I have a brother. By the way, my brother's name is Keith.
That is hysterical.
I'm not joking. My real brother's name is Keith. So
I love it.
So when I travel or when I'm around, people will go, "Are you related to Keith Urban?" And I go, "Matter of fact, I am. He's my brother."
You could be his double.
And they're like, anyway, not that Keith Urban, but yeah, my brother's name is
Yeah,
Keith.
I love it.
Anyway, okay, so now when you're majoring in school in communications, public relations communications is right. Did you know what you wanted to do? Are you like, okay,
No.
I'm going to work for dad, or talk to me?
Actually, I did know what I wanted to do, and then I soon learned that it probably did not suit me as well as where ultimately I ended up. And I went into college with wanting to be a broadcast journalist. I wanted to anchor the news.
Okay.
And I soon learned that it just was not soon. Actually, it was the second semester of my senior year. I was like, this is not for me. And along the way, I had taken a bunch of business courses, advertising, marketing.
Okay.
That can always serve anybody, right?
Okay.
So I had taken all those classes, and it was second semester of my senior year that a professional selling professor asked me to intern for his company. And I was selling radio time and print ad space through my internship.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, why not intern for your dad, or did he not have any employees at that time?
He didn't have any employees at that time, but I got to be honest with you, it never crossed my mind.
Really? Okay.
That we would be working together.
Okay. All right. So you did this internship.
Mm-hmm.
And then were you like, okay, this is what I want to do, or you still just kind of like,
No, I had no idea. I was one of those college graduates, quite frankly, that had made such a pivot, my final year, that I truly was lost and very fearful at that time about what I would be doing.
Okay.
And this internship ultimately led to the owner of this business, my professor, asking my father to do a project, a graphic design creative project.
I see.
And that's how it all started.
So that was one of his first customers.
It wasn't one of his first customers, but it was the first customer where we were having discussions about, maybe we should give this a whirl and see what happens.
I see. All right. And then what? So you finished that, and then your dad says, all right, come help me.
Yeah, he sat me down. I'll never forget it. We were at a Chili's restaurant in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay.
And we had just got done with a meeting with this. Actually, the professor had a banking client, and we were doing a project for this bank. And he said, why don't we try this out together? Why don't we give this a whirl? And I think that we could really make something. And
were you worried? Were you thinking, I don't know if I want to work for my dad or not? That might be tough. I mean, was he pretty like type A driven, kind of like a hardcore guy, or was he a super soft personality? Well, like, what was his style?
It was both. Okay. So it's very interesting. I think in family businesses, you have the business persona, and this is important for any family business out there. You need your business persona and you need your family persona. He had his father and his CEO persona at the time, and I had my, account manager and daughter persona. And to be able to switch between the two is very, very important gift that my father gave one another throughout our career. And so working through that, he was hardcore. He was very professional. and hardcore and very direct in a very proactive, positive, enriching way.
Okay.
And I even called him Kit in business.
I was just about to ask you, like, when you guys were around the other employees, did you call him Dad or no? So you didn't.
It was Kit. It was Kit.
All right.
And then, I mean, we could switch like this. We could be having a conversation about business and a client, and then we could go into family dialogue, and it was Dad. I mean,
Wow.
and it was just so innate for me to be able to turn this on and off.
Very cool. Okay.
I loved it.
And was there ever a time where he, like, give us a story when he called and he said, "Hey, listen, Lori, that's a terrible job. Like, come on, you got to get it together." Like a certain thing he called you where you screwed something up and it was like a big deal and you were super bummed out about it. Anything?
It definitely happens, right? I mean, it happens no matter if you're a family business or a daughter or a father. And I think hearing that from your father is really hard.
Yes,
My father and I were as close as a daughter and a father could be. We were best friends. We were business partners. We were confidants. We trusted one another very, very, very deeply. And I remember, when I tried not to do stupid things.
Yeah.
And nothing was ever flagrant.
Right.
But it was always,
we all mess up every once in a while.
We do. And it was always very, again, enriching. So it would have been, how perhaps we were interacting in a pitch. And he afterwards, he'd say, "You did this, 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 and this incredibly well. Next time, let's take a look at answering the question this way." And I was constantly learning. I remember going on meetings with him at a very young age, and he said something that has been so profound for me to this day. We were talking, and I said, "You know so much. You are such an expert in any kind of topic out there." He was an incredibly intelligent, vibrant man. And he knew so much about everything. So there was the agency side of the business, right? And marketing and the strategies that we would deploy and the corresponding tactics. But there was just also raw insight regarding any type of topic out there. He was a walking encyclopedia. And after this particular meeting, I mentioned, "You're such an expert. I can't wait until I get to the point that I have the confidence that I can answer questions and have a conversation like you've just had with this client." And he said to me, "Lori, I'm a life learner. I don't believe in the term expert because we're constantly learning." And remember that. It's a very, very important point to make.
That's great. Oh, that's a good one. Now, so was he excellent at client relations and getting contracts, like closing deals? Was that?
He was. I gotta be. He was our creative director ultimately, and our lead strategist. And I don't recall a time. There became a point in time where it was so natural for us to interact with one another and just dovetail off something we had said with little rehearsal. I mean, we always rehearse no matter what. But
you're driving to the meeting in separate cars. You're calling each other like, "Okay, what's the?" Yeah.
Yeah, we always drove down to meetings together, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, we always drove together when we could. I would say 95% of our meetings and our out-of-state clients, we would fly together, we'd drive together.
Cool.
And we always had great
At
conversations.
what point were you thinking, "I'm going to take over the business someday as the president and CEO"? Like, walk us into, skip a few years forward where you're thinking, did he just come to you and say, "Hey, I'm ready to play golf and chill. I want you to"?
He did. He did. And I never thought about, because our relationship was so strong and our business partnership was so strong, to me, the title meant nothing.
Okay.
And so I didn't look for the title. I didn't need it.
Yeah.
We were accomplishing so much. And I remember about 15 years into our partnership, he was going to Africa, and he had a couple other businesses on the side, and he left me in charge. Yeah, he left me in charge of selling one of the businesses, and I was, I don't know, 32.
Okay.
And so I'm going to sell the business for you. I will do that, but I also want a will in place, and we need to figure some things out.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, along the way here. So we got a bunch of that stuff figured out. But during that, that time before he went on, he loved Africa, spent a lot of time in Africa, spent a lot of time
really?
in southern, Latin America fishing, and, just all these crazy trips he would go on, hunts up in Alaska and Canada, and
Very cool. Very cool.
He lived many, many lives. He had
Awesome.
many bucket lists.
Awesome.
And so we got, all the paperwork in place. And during that time, he said to me, I'm going to make you president. And I said, really? And I was very excited. But I wasn't looking for it. It was all what we felt was best.
Okay.
In a worst case scenario, if something horrible was to happen. So we changed some shares around at that time and just put everything in place.
How many employees did you have when you took over as president?
We've always had anywhere between 10 and 12 full-time and around 12 contract.
And nobody else on staff at the time had been there a long time. Like, hey, I want to be president. You didn't have that kind of issue going on at the time.
No, although my brother worked for the agency at that time as well. And he went out after he was a fine arts major, very creative from a design standpoint, very similar to my father. And he went the corporate route. So his first job out of college was with Albertsons out of Northern California.
Okay.
And I believe they're now Ralph's, or there are a lot of buyouts in that industry. But he ultimately became the advertising director for 75 stores, wanting to get back to Colorado. He and his wife did.
Okay.
So they came back, and he started as our production manager in the shop. And to this day, I mean, it's just, there's so much family respect, right? My brother's sick. He's not been with the agency for quite a while. He does a little bit of work for us on the side, But
at the time, was he jockeying for position? You and him both were? No, none of that.
I mean, it was, he knew that I was not better. He knew I was best suited.
I see. Gotcha.
To take on that position. It was never.
I see.
I mean, there
was never any like weird family. Come on, you can tell us. You can tell us.
Truly, this was a fairy tale family.
Well, okay.
Business.
All right. There was never any weird Thanksgivings where like, okay, I'm pissed off at Lori because she took over the company.
No.
None of that. All right.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, to this day, we adore one another. We're so close.
Well, now, are there some family members that work there now today?
No, I mean, just my older brother a little bit. My mom is fully retired. She worked with the agency for a little while. But that was it. We laughed because my little sister got a psychology degree.
Okay.
And we said that is what is needed for the family, with us all working together, as perfect as it was.
Right.
The joke was she needed to go get a psychology degree. So.
Okay. So Lori, before we get into, an Avocet overview, as it is today, just one last thing on the family stuff. What's one more piece of advice for anybody out there that's in a business where there's family members? Just wrap it up for us and give us kind of a sentence or two of overall advice.
Sure. I think it takes a very special people to work together as a family, and trust is huge. The trust is so deep, and that is what made my father's and my partnership so incredibly beautiful. But check your ego at the door.
Check your ego.
Check your ego at the door. It is just, you love one another. You adore one another as family members, hopefully, right? Otherwise, why would you want to work together?
Right.
And if you check your ego at the door and just are very humble as a leader, as a person, as a family daughter, as a father-daughter relationship, it doesn't matter at all. You will succeed if you are honest that way.
Awesome. Okay. Very good. Congratulations, by the way, on the fact that you guys worked together that long for that many years. That's not easy to do. I mean, most of the time, in fact, I can't remember. I read this recently. There's the percentage drop off from founder to trying to pass the business on to one of the, children. I mean, it usually doesn't work. In fact, the majority of the time, I think the business ends up folding. And so
Right.
the fact that you've done it successfully, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was incredibly, yeah, I was the luckiest girl on the face of this earth. I really was. I mean, my father and I'm still lucky. He's still with us, just in a different
Right.
way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I cherish every moment. We were joined at the hip, and I
That's cool.
cherish every moment.
Very cool. Give us an overview of the business today, Avocet,
Sure.
for all the listeners out there. Tell us about it.
Sure. So Avocet is an integrated communications firm. So we connect the dots between sales and revenue and ignite growth through owned, earned, paid, and shared media. And what we mean by that is owned are the assets that you have total control over, like a website, trade show programs. It could be direct mail, whatever that, those components are. Shared is your content, very similar to podcast, social media, blogging, video content. Earned is PR, of course, and paid is all of the different paid channels from digital to TV to print.
I see. Now, do you target small business, large, medium, everybody? Who's your typical customer?
So we target companies that are ready to achieve exponential growth, or they've got a new product introduction in the marketplace that they need some very powerful minds and strategies behind to really launch them. So we work with a lot of startup companies that are funded, and they've got a reoccurring revenue, and they are ready to take it to the next level. We work for a lot of small to medium-sized companies that may have a reoccurring revenue, but they are ready, they're done DIYing. They want to really take it to the next step. And then we work with quite a few enterprise clients as well, who might need one of the core services that we offer as or outside strategy, as a matter of fact.
Nationwide, or your concentration is Colorado, or?
We're nationwide, and we actually even have programs that we deploy internationally.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Very good. Can you give us, how much do you want to share? How big the do you call it a firm, or do you call it an agency? What do you use when you're
the firm sounds so
stuffy,
corporate. Yeah, we're anything but corporate, that's for sure. It's a shop, an agency. We take a look at our size by capitalized billings, because most of our media, our clients pay directly, versus us funneling through the house. We'll place it, we'll plan it, negotiate, place, but they pay direct. So we're about a $10 million agency compared to a lot of the large agencies out there.
Yeah, but sometimes it's great to work with a smaller agency, right? I mean,
go ahead. We're nimble. We never stop thinking. The white glove approach is very important to us. We want every single one of our clients to feel as though they're the only client.
How many employees today?
We've got, again, 12 full-time and 12 contract.
Okay, I see.
But I was going to say, we've achieved 20% year-over-year growth for the last 5 years.
Really? Congratulations.
Thank you. With the same team. So the efficiencies that we've built with the contract team members have really helped foster the growth, because we don't have that bottom line expense either.
And you guys never had to take on any cash or outside investors or anything like that, right? I mean, your dad bootstrapped it from the beginning.
Yeah, we are self-funded, and we've had lines of credit to help with the ebbs and flow of cash flow, of course, but that's it.
Wow. All right. So the family still owns the business, basically, then, right?
So I'm still owner at this stage. So my father, when he retired, I bought him out.
I see. Okay. Very good. Congratulations. I mean, you don't. Hey, dealing with investors is not always fun. So
I know. I know. It's not always easy.
When you're meeting with all these companies that want to hire you, can you talk to us about some, what I would call, common opportunities you just usually see in a startup to, mid-sized company, just generally, like, okay, I usually see this, and this is where the immediate opportunities are. Go ahead.
It's interesting. We'll start with strategy, right? Because all too often, especially if it's in the startup arena, and maybe, a company that's got 10 years of reoccurring revenue behind it, you still have the owners very involved in the business. And for the most part, they believe that the product or the solution is going to sell itself, and they get stuck. because that doesn't work. It might work for a little while if it's a real novel product or the service is so unique and different that people are just, glopping onto it. The marketing is less, but you get to a point that if you really want to ignite your growth, you've got to do something more. And what happens typically in this situation is there are points of parity, so points that are very similar to the competition, but that point of differentiation has begun to mold into other competition just following suit, and they really need to re-strategize. They need to take a look at the product. How does it differentiate? What do the customers feel about it? What are the true points of parity? And what are we going to do to differentiate ourselves from a creative, from a messaging, from an approach standpoint, that we can shorten the sales cycle and sell to more people more often? Does not matter if it's B2B or retail or consumer product. We work within all those industries.
Okay.
But typically, that is what happens. And they realize that they need outside resources to help them think outside of the box and just approach things differently.
How about this, though? I'm guessing this happens sometimes. Maybe the executives in the company know they need outside resources to get some fresh ideas and some different strategy. But then you guys come in and you pitch, some things they need to do. And then there's a founder somewhere over in the corner is like, well, we've always done it this way, and I don't really want to change. You ever get any of that?
Oh yeah, and typically we say no to those businesses. I mean, if we cannot affect positive change for them, then we're going to look bad. So if they don't have that mindset and they don't have buy-in, then we typically turn the business down.
I just was talking to somebody about that the other day. If you do own a business, especially a service business, I advise you, if you're listening to this podcast, if you have clients that are either super difficult to work with or are going to end up making your business look bad, or it's just going to be a messy relationship, just don't do it. I mean, just move away from that quickly. There are other clients. And I think sometimes if you're in the service business, especially early on when cash flow is critical and you're just trying to land accounts, sometimes you sign up clients that are miserable.
Right. I think, I'm sorry, I think knowing when to fold them is a really important lesson. We've fired a couple clients a little too late. Like we really rolled up our sleeves and got into it, and we were in the throes of 6 months in, and I've realized this is just not a good fit, and we've still fired them. Which you just have to do. But I really wish that I would have followed my instinct and my gut early on and just made the decision then.
That's a great tip for the listeners if you own a service business. Plus, it'll free up resources to work on great clients.
That's right. I mean, there are a lot of good people out there.
There really are. Yeah. You don't have to put up with bad ones. That's a great tip.
No.
Okay, very good. And then I want to ask you about your podcast if I can, but before we do that, just avocetcommunications.com. So it's AVOCET, avocetcommunications.com. Right. Is that the best thing to do if they want to contact you? I'm sure there's in fact, I'm looking at it right now. There's a contact page on there.
Yep. And my name's spelled Lori, Lori, so you can email me directly, Lori at avocetcommunications.com.
Okay. Very good. Now, tell us about this podcast, though, that you do as well, right? I want to talk about that. It's the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
Yes, it is. So the backstory is this. I was on a flight home from an industry agency meeting and trying to really come up with ideas on how we can differentiate ourselves. This is 4 years ago, so 2016.
Good for you. You beat the curve. We beat
the curve. So February 2016, I write a business plan on the airport regarding the launch of the podcast. I think we need to call it Integrate and Ignite because we're all about integrating your communications channels to ignite an outcome.
I see.
So it ties into everything. It ties into the heart and soul of the business.
Okay.
And so I write the marketing plan or the business plan. This was, at the end of the week, on a Monday morning, I presented it to the team. I said, we need to find a way to do this. And I'd love to be able to do it in-house. because if we can do this for ourselves, I think ultimately we can do it for our clients as well. And the real goal behind starting the podcast was to create our own content that would become shareable for other brands out there.
I see.
And we started out, we pivoted a couple times. I mean, some of the best business decisions are when you pivot, right?
Yep.
And so we started out by interviewing CEOs and business leaders on leadership, and we had a couple marketing questions. And, the numbers were good, but I realized that I wanted to be engaging with more thought leaders surrounding specific marketing topics. So we pivoted about 120 episodes in.
120, wow. Yep.
Yeah, we will launch our 300th episode next week, as a matter of fact.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. We pivoted, and our listenership started exceeding goal. Which is what we were looking for. And like I said, we've got our 300th episode coming out next week.
First of all, you were ahead of the curve. Now everybody wants to do a podcast, right? And so in 2016, it was, there were podcasting was happening, but nothing like it is today.
Right. The numbers were probably 50%. I would admit, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but podcasting in general has grown so much. I think literally, especially in the business piece, not necessarily consumer and music downloads, stuff like that, which is really where it started. But business podcasts have virtually doubled over the last 4 years.
By the way, also, you've been doing it for 4 years. So many people, I see this all the time. People will say, I'm going to start my own podcast. And I always go, okay, let me know how that goes, because it takes a lot of time and effort, and it's not as easy as you think.
Well, it isn't. And the average the average company produces 7 podcasts and then quits.
Yes, that sounds exactly right. And I would bet they always say the restaurant industry is a 90% failure rate. I can almost guarantee you podcasting is probably close, because I think agree. They start and they're like, oh, this is cool. And then pretty soon they're editing like 4 weekends in a row instead of going to hang out with their friends on a Saturday. And then they're like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah, it takes a team. It really does. I mean, we've got a team that actually produces. I do most of my pitching, although I have help with that as well. Great. And then a team that writes the show notes and the content itself, and then launch. So it takes a team. It takes a village.
I forgot to tell you that because you're on the Riderflex podcast, that means I can send my stuff to your team and they're going to edit all my stuff from now on. I'm just playing.
Yeah, they'll make me look real good.
The editing is just takes so much time.
It does.
Oh man. Okay. And then I wanted just a few more things here. Okay. So the podcast, by the way, if they want to listen to it, what's the best way to find it? And you just do a search on, go ahead.
iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can download the podcast on. Then, of course, our website as well. You can listen from our website.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's do this. A lot of the tips we give on the Riderflex podcast, when I'm not interviewing somebody, I throw out daily tips on job interviewing and career advice. And since you've been managing employees now for a long time and you have a good sized crew over there, can I ask you a few questions around hiring and people?
Of course.
Tell me first, when you're hiring somebody new there at Avocet, what do you tell me what you look for? And let's just assume the skill set matches. Let's just assume they have whatever skill set you're looking for. Okay. That you check those boxes, but what do you look for in their style and personality to make sure it's going to fit the company culture?
So culture is huge, right? And a lot of times it's, the ability for people to think on their feet, the ability for people to laugh, at a moment's notice. How can they break the clutter, break the ice? Are they quick-witted? Okay. In the agency business, a quick wit is really important from, I believe, the ability to answer tough questions on your feet in a client scenario that, if you're brainstorming or you've got a pivot or you've got a crisis management situation that happens, you've got to be able to handle the pressure. There's a lot of pressure in this business.
Yes.
So quick wit, being able to respond in those situations, I think is a great litmus test on how someone can respond, but then also make the entire team feel uncomfortable and not get hysterical in perhaps a negative situation.
Okay. And how about this? You got some favorite interview questions, like one or two that you usually ask?
Yeah, and it has to do with family. What is one
Oh,
of the best relationships that you had growing up outside of business, outside of a working environment?
okay.
We find that if retention is important to you and you don't want to have a revolving door, that the strength in how people grew up as children, as teenagers with their family is very, very important
Ooh,
to
right.
creating
Mm-hmm.
stickiness in the culture today.
Mm-hmm. You're right. How about one more question on that? Common mistakes you see from people coming into interview? Like, just do you sometimes you interview somebody and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I see the same.
Well, and they're so basic. And I
I
mean, it's so
know.
basic, like sending to whom it may concern, email or letter, or coming into an interview without a notebook and without questions about the position and the company. It's, I have not stopped in a rude way, but very much shortened interviews
Oh,
that
yes.
maybe were to take 45 minutes or an hour down to 15 minutes in
Mm-hmm.
these situations, because it's just not worth my time.
I, it is, by the way, here's a tip for the listeners. If you interview with Riderflex, our recruiting firm, and I ask you at the end of the conversation whether or not you have any questions, if you don't have any, you're not getting the job.
Yeah, there are always a million questions that can be asked. Yeah, I agree.
It blows me away. Some of that stuff is a killer. Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that. So at this point now, we can relate because we have a lot in common with
Yeah.
our history here, and we're about the same age. So you are getting to that point in your life now where you're probably reflecting more than you used to. I'm just guessing because
Hmm.
I do now at this stage in my life. I have those, moments where I'm reflecting back. When you when you when you look back and you think about that 21-year-old coming out of college at CSU in Greeley, Colorado, if you could call that young lady and tell her anything today, what would you say?
uh, it's interesting. Be on time.
Be on time.
Yeah,
Okay.
be on time. That was one of my father's pet peeves.
Oh,
And, I'm 21, and, I get into the office at 8:15 and he'd get in at, 5 or 6. He was an early bird. And, the rule, that sounds so strict, but there weren't really rules. There were just guidelines, right?
yeah.
8:15 was very late to him. So just make sure you're on time. Again, it's such a basic. But more than that, so I was so eager to learn. And so I was predisposed to listen and to grow through listening. And we've got this incredible library in the agency on books that I just started buying and reading, and
Great.
really trying, Ogilvy on advertising, really trying to diversify what I knew my father knew very well, and taking us to the next level. And so I was constantly learning, constantly listening, constantly reading, reflecting.
Mm.
And don't think that you know it all at age 21, because you know this much
Right.
compared to what ultimately you're going to learn over the coming years.
It's so true. Anytime not to pick on millennials, but yeah, when I sometimes I'm like, listen, yeah, I have some advice for you. Talk less and listen more.
Yeah, really. I would totally
Oh,
agree.
one more last question here. Um, if you could put your core purpose into a sentence at this point in your life, and I think core purpose changes a little bit depending on where you're at, what stage you're at. But at this point now, today, if you could put that into one sentence, your core purpose, and I asked you not to include your husband or kids, so kind of core purpose, not including family, because I'm going to assume that's automatically the main core
Hmm.
purpose. So if we set that
It
over
is.
to the side for a second, assuming that's number one, besides family, how would you define your core purpose?
It's changed a lot in the last 12 months, and it's changed
Mm.
because of my
Mm-hmm.
father,
Mm-hmm.
not being with us anymore.
Mm.
And I believe my core purpose today is to carry on his legacy and create an environment that we can keep his vision alive And I always wanted it to be, there's so many things that differentiate Avocet from the competition because of my father's thought process. So that's always been as a part of our solution and how we, bring on new clients. But maintaining his legacy in a very, very big way is more important to me today than ever. And
I like it.
And we'll do that.
I like it. Do you find yourself now increasing your personal bucket list now that you see it was a reminder for you, like, wow, okay, life is going to end at some point. I have some things I want to check off my list. Is your bucket list longer now?
It is. There's no doubt about it, but I'm so focused on continuing to make my father proud that so much of that happens in the confines of these four walls and this roof right now. That I love the business. I love the energy. I love the change. I love that this industry is changing so much around us. Technology is just every 24/7, there's something new that we need to know about. And so again, keeping family out of the bucket list side of things and out of this piece of it, we still have so much more to accomplish as a company from a growth standpoint and a visionary standpoint that it's going to happen. And I'm excited to be here doing it.
I'm just curious, what time do you get to the office now?
Well, okay, so so I still have a little one that I'm dropping off to school. And so my mom title and CEO title do cross over.
I see.
But I will tell you, I get up between 4 and 5 each day, start working at my home office.
There we go.
Then get the kids out, and then I get in about 7:45 after I drop our youngest off. Through Carline.
Very good. Very good. Lori, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast and sharing your story. Very inspirational. I appreciate you sharing some of the personal stuff too. Awesome.
It has been my pleasure. I appreciate the time very much.
You bet. Can you hang on just a second? I'm going to hit stop on the recording, but hold on before you hang up, okay?
You bet. I will.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.